Hey everyone, welcome to The New Populist. I'm Dave Brown, co-author of the book Black and White, How the Left is Destroying the Dream of Martin Luther King. If you want a right-leaning perspective on race relations, go ahead and pick up a copy. It is available on Amazon and there is a link in the description. And of course, if you are new to this channel, please share, like, and subscribe. There is a topic that I've wanted to talk about for a while now, and I was watching an earlier video by Mark Dice, and he had mentioned the Sacramento teacher that is a member of Antifa, and when he was confronted by Project Veritas, he was wearing his nice shiny new communist t-shirt, and Mark Dice said, why do communists get away with being communists openly, where if you were wearing a swastika, for example, you would immediately be, you're gone. And this is not a new thing. Communists have, for the last 100 years, have been getting a pass from the media, and a lot of their behavior is ignored or excused. And we see this with of course, Antifa, who half of them are open communists. The media goes out of its way to, minimize what they do. According to Joe Biden, they're just an idea. They're not an organization, despite the fact that they're very well organized. And anytime there is a right-wing, quote unquote, right-wing, everything is called right-wing if it's conservative, protest or event, Antifa shows up to be violent thugs. And this has gone on for a very long time. We have to go back to the First World War to see where, communists have sort of been given this pass, or their behavior hasn't gotten enough scrutiny. And we have to look at the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917. We have, Trotsky and Lenin taking over Russia. And what people need to understand was that at that time, they believed that Russia would be the first domino in this worldwide revolution. So it would start in Russia, and then it would spill over into Europe and take over the entire world. That was the plan for the Marxists. It wasn't just taking over Russia. They wanted to take over the whole world, and there were Marxists in each of these countries in Europe: England, France, Switzerland, Italy, and they all, communicated together. They had their own papers. They would, attack one another, on ideology. But they were all brainstorming in Europe, and Russia fell, and then they thought that it would spread over into Germany, and then France, England, and so on. And they tried this. 1918, what do we have in Germany? The German Revolution. Fortunately, it failed, and it led to a bunch of communists being executed. Well, what happened after that revolution, the communists didn't stop. So you have World War I ending. If all these troops coming home, and say you're a German troop and you've been in the trenches for 2 or 3 years, you come home and you have communists in 1918 trying to overthrow your government. And if you're a communist, of course, you don't believe in a nation state, because that's an antiquated model that is for the oppressors. And in the new communist world, there's supposed to be no nations, and it's supposed to be this workers' paradise. Of course, that's nonsense. But you have these German soldiers coming home in 1918, and these communists are trying to overthrow the government. They fail, but they continue. And what happened after World War I in Germany? Who kind of rose up? Adolf Hitler. And what did Adolf Hitler capitalize on? He was pushing back in part to the fact that communists were still in Germany trying to influence the country. Same thing happened in Italy. Mussolini, part of his rise was to the fact that he was fighting back against communists. And what do? He says, hey, I love Italy. We have these internationalists, these communists trying to overthrow our country. And that's how he was able to get people to his side. Hitler, the same thing. He used that national sentiment to get people to his side. And you have to remember, too, that both Hitler and Mussolini, while they were, obviously maniacs, they both fought in World War I. And they understood how the soldiers felt who returned home from war. just to have communists trying to overthrow their countries. And so that set up this sort of dichotomy between communists and fascists. Unfortunately, in the future, anytime somebody fights back against communists, what do they immediately call you? They call you a fascist. What is Antifa called? What's that short for? Anti-fascist. So they're operating in this model where anytime they protest and anybody pushes back on the right, or anybody who's not crazy, they immediately label you a fascist. And that's sort of their way to sort of get you. And we on the right have to be very careful on how we, confront these left-wing groups, because we don't have the media on our side to, cover for us. They will join in with Antifa to attack us. Now, the media, are they communists? No. But as we know, their philosophy or they have beliefs that run, parallel to a lot of these, communists and a lot of these Antifa types. So they use Antifa as their foot soldiers to do things that is helpful for them to expand their own power. That's kind of the funny thing is these low-level communist thugs, they think that in this new revolution, they're going to get power. No, the people on top, these left-wingers who cover for them in the media and these corporations and government, they'll crush them too when it comes down to it. So they really are foolish. But the point being, the media covers for their fellow travelers, these Antifa types, these communist types, and they do it to attack the right and to try to pin us into this box as being fascist. Of course, they called Donald Trump a fascist. And the irony is that when we look at fascism, unlike communism, you have the government and private corporations of business working together. Now, under the fascist model, the government or whatever strongman in power would exert its power on the private sector to have the private sector do their bidding. In the U.S., it's not quite so heavy-handed. Unfortunately, a lot of these tech moguls are more than willing to do what the government says. So when the press secretary Psaki says, we're working with Facebook or YouTube to stop disinformation, they're tipping their hand that they don't have to be heavy-handed with these companies because they're already in cahoots and they have their philosophies run together. And unfortunately, it's I would call it a sort of a soft fascism where it's not so obvious. There's not people in the streets from the government, with their going around beating people up and forcing people to, comply. Unfortunately, they have these companies complying already, so they don't have to do that. And it sort of hides that fascism. And if you're a true liberal, not a leftist, you should be against what's going on right now with censorship from social media groups. And that's where we also have to make the differentiation between what a liberal is and what a leftist is. A liberal is for free speech. A leftist, communist, these types, they're not. Do not be confused. A communist don't believe in free speech. If you look at every example in any communist country, when it was taken over, the first thing they do is they stomp out free speech. And you can read Lenin and Trotsky. They find it a necessary, step to prevent those old, traditional, bourgeois ways from filtering back into the public sphere. So they have to, in their words or in their viewpoint, stomp it out because it's corrosive and it will kind of grow back like and replicate like a virus. So they have to be heavy-handed and stomp it out. So communists are not free speech, and these Antifa types, and I think a lot of Black Lives Matter, unfortunately, they're not just a racial group. A lot of them are Marxist. They don't believe in free speech. So tell your leftist friends and your liberal friends that they need to differentiate themselves between being a liberal and being a leftist / communist, whatever. Because if they think that supporting these groups, that they're not supporting anti-free speech and that they're not supporting using force against people they don't like, that's what they're doing. They're supporting thugs and people who will attack you in the streets. I hope I made that clear. So we on the right, we have to be careful to make sure we don't fall into this trap of being labeled as fascist. Of course, there's nothing you can do about it to a certain extent, But when we go into the streets, like the Proud Boys or other groups, we have to be careful, because all it does is feed that fire and it allows them to create propaganda against us. So we got to be careful. All right, that's it for now. I will see you soon. And again, if you are new to this channel, please like and subscribe. Have a good one.